Hi, I'm Leo Clifford, host of the Telco Global Forum, and I'm excited to have Tom Edwards of BlackFin360 joining us now. Tom is the 2020 OnCon Icon Top 50 Global Marketer Award winner and the 2020 and 2019 Professional of the Year for Marketing and Emerging Technology. He's also the 2019 Titan Technology Advocate Award winner, the 2019 OnCon Icon Marketing Trailblazer and Contributor Award winner, and he was recently named by Advertising Age as a Marketing Technology Trailblazer. Tom is a data-driven, digitally centric marketing technology executive and professional futurist speaker. Tom specializes in the integration of emerging technology, digital transformation, thought leadership, innovation, and leading strategic teams. Tom has developed a significant base of experience across multiple industries, which has led to strategic, interactive, and innovation-led consulting engagements with hundreds of Fortune 1000 organizations. Tom also speaks regularly as a professional futurist, including TEDx, AdAge, Data, and many more. Tom leverages experience from previous initiatives to create buzz, drive awareness, develop new business, contribute to the direction of great products, and create captivating marketing programs that spin early adoption through to mass mind share. Welcome, Tom.
Leo, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to join you today.
Thank you. And your talk is broken up into three distinct sections: empower, exponential, enhanced. Data, specifically understanding consumer behavior and how that impacts experiences, is at the center. So let's start with data strategy and empower.
Absolutely. So again, thank you for having me. I speak across the globe. I talk about, it's called innovation to reality, and it's empower, exponential, enhance. Empower is all about consumer behavior influencing technology. Exponential is all about the role that intelligent systems are going to play, and enhanced is all about simulation. So when we start about empower, it's all about empowering creativity. And it's really about understanding affinity and behavior and how that influences technology. So for me, what I normally do when I'm talking about this for organizations, I like to start with today. I like to ground it in what's familiar. Talk a lot about various types of pop culture references, talk a lot about gaming and Fortnite, talk about the Matrix, talk about, different elements that people can resonate and relate to. When we talk about empower, it's really about control. We've seen behavioral shifts from individuals over the last 10 years or so, and specifically tied to Gen Z. Gen Z is 1996 to 2010. They're going to represent 40% of consumers. And they're the first mobile-first generation. They learn to swipe before they learn to speak. And their behaviors are going to have a significant impact on how technology evolves. And the role that data can play to both understand the world of today and how to connect with consumers, but also then the role that it's going to have moving forward as we move toward key takeaways for business. We'll talk about how, from a marketing perspective, it used to be about the 4 Ps of product, price, place, promotion. By the end of our discussion today, I'll talk about 4 new Ps that you need to consider once we've gone through the elements of empower, exponential, and enhance as a core takeaway that can help drive business and digital transformation forward.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. What role does data play for intelligent systems?
So lately, you've seen, I was at CES earlier this year, and we've already got the announcement that next year's event is now going to be digital, but AI was everywhere. A lot of my work over the last 4 years has really been tied to using unstructured data and machine learning to really uncover themes, perceptions, and occasions so that I can figure out different ways to actually connect in a really relevant way with consumers at various kind of points. What AI is actually allowed for, it's allowed for this kind of exponential acceleration. So I used to talk about the idea that disruption was the new normal. Now it's less about disruption and more about this convergence that's being powered by AI. And data is fuel for AI. That's where we're heading into this golden age to where we can essentially accelerate different processes internally. We can process millions of conversations in seconds. But this is going to be incredibly key, tying it back to empower. When you start aligning artificial intelligence with things like the camera and computer vision, to where you can essentially have AI that's pulling high dimensional context from your environment and being able to read that in real time. That's again where the data component and understanding how, when, why, environmental location information combined with behavior is going to be absolutely critical. Because what most organizations don't understand is right now, everyone's focused on the consumer in the center. The foundation of marketing is consumer-centric marketing. What's going to happen because of the proliferation of these systems, we're going to move from a time of essentially consumer-centric marketing to system-based. And how you can basically evoke emotion from a system versus a consumer are two completely different things. So the role that AI is going to play, I kind of look at it through this lens of these 5 levels of autonomy. We're beginning to see it now. The first level is all around voice assistants. We start looking at, you start looking at Alexa, you start looking at Google in terms of how we can interact and have with conversational experiences. And we continue to move down the line to digital humans, to emotive robotics, all the way through to Westworld. So as we're kind of going, as I go through the talk, I talk about how we'll evolve. And the interesting piece about AI, I've done research across generational cohorts, across from boomers all the way to Gen Z. And there's one thing that's consistent about why people will adopt intelligent systems into their everyday lives. And that's ease and convenience. So ease and convenience is the key that people are looking for to further offload onto proxies simple tasks. And that begins to build a bridge between us and where we're going, to where ultimately the mobile device isn't necessarily going to be the primary way that we interact with technology. So that's just a brief glimpse into AI, the role that data plays, and ultimately how that's going to lead towards simulation.
Okay. How should businesses prepare and what should they expect?
So it's really important. Pre-pandemic, it was all about trying to define a specific strategy and understand the first-party data assets that you have internally. That's what I call data of identity. Whenever you understand specifically, these are the elements that we own and control. There's data of culture, which is a lot of businesses do not take into consideration that 90% of the information around consumers is unstructured data. It's on the open web. There are conversations that are happening. That's where AI can take and accelerate the understanding of what's happening. The third is really around intent. So if you're an organization, you're looking to drive acquisition or retention or win back or growth, you also need to understand the intent signals. So the signals that are deliberate by an individual. This can tie into search history, etc. So making sure that your organization is structuring data in a way that you're relevant across not only traditional search, but also across voice ecosystems. And ultimately, when we start moving towards spatial computing, basically enabling us to work with the environment around us. So all of these things are interconnected, and having a solid understanding of what information is available, what's actually usable, and why are incredibly important.
Tom, you talk a lot about enhanced reality. What role will data and intelligent systems play in the near future?
So we're already seeing it begin to build. So I love attending developer conferences. One of the best ways to understand how technology is evolving is to really look at basically what's on tap with some of the leading technology providers and publishers that are out there today. I like digging into the various use cases and trying to figure out and where the bets are going. I look at what patents are being filed, what organizations are working towards specific experiences that will ultimately lead towards this new reality. So as I think about this connection, I make a joke here in the talk, basically talk a lot about the matrix and the idea of simulation theory, how we could all possibly be living in a computer simulation. But again, the role that the virtual assistant, like we're becoming so dependent on them day to day to day. There'll be 8.8 billion of them by 2023 out in the marketplace. And as we begin to look at and have that become a proxy for us, so they become preference centers. The virtual assistant will ultimately have our preferences, my preferences, your preferences for entertainment, for a number of different product affinities. All these various things will be within the assistant. And what you see happening from Google and others is that the assistant's actually moving to the center of the operating system. So Apple wants to keep native applications relevant. They've had 180 billion downloads. It's the one thing that hasn't been disrupted since 2008. You have all of this dependency for businesses on native applications. What Google is ultimately trying to do is they ultimately want to supersede the applications. They want the assistant in the center so that it can stitch together various tasks into scenes to where it's seamless for you as an individual. An example of this is they recently showed an example of Google Duplex where the virtual assistant basically reserved an appointment. And then the following year followed it up with having the virtual assistant going through the entire process of renting a car. So what we'll begin to see is that virtual assistant is a preference center. The second thing we'll see is kind of pervasive connectivity through 5G. And intelligent systems are going to be incredibly important. The more that we have ubiquitous connectivity, the more that we can have systems basically driving what's called edge computing. That's where you start seeing the reality of smart cities, being able to process information locally so that processing happens almost instantaneously. That's also going to tie into how everything is being digitally mapped right now as we speak. So as our world becomes digitized, as we are in constant connection, as we're empowered by intelligent systems, and ultimately within the next 5 years or so, someone will release a glasses form factor or a smart contact that will then further, again, take that next leap forward in terms of spatial computing. So AI tied to the camera, understanding the world around us, being able to pull context. Within Google, you have Google Lenses, which you can actually point to any specific object, and it's already tied to Google Assistant in the Knowledge Graph. So you can begin to see the connection between the assistant, between the camera, this kind of through line of AI, and then moving away from the mobile device as the primary which we interact with technology. That's where we start getting to this idea of simulation at scale. So brands and organizations need to understand that it's not only about creating experiences that are traditionally for the desktop and for the mobile device, but it's also focusing on voice, vision, and touch. It's these new modalities that are going to help drive the future of experience that businesses need to pay attention to. And the data that's basically feeding and fueling these systems is what's going to basically enhance the experiences every step of the way. The organizations that understand and create experiences that align across each of these modalities are the ones that are going to be incredibly successful. Those that focus purely on what was traditionally, traditional desktop, traditional mobile, digital marketing, they'll eventually be left behind. So it's incredibly important because all of these AI-based systems are based on the data that's actually fueling them and training the models. So you can see how it all kind of connects together. I know that was a lot, but I wanted to try to deliver it as succinctly as possible.
No, fascinating. And how do you see us making the shift from the mobile device as the primary way in which we connect?
So it all ties into that kind of that thought process, to where we see the camera becoming a bridge to intelligence. We see this new way of connectivity, and we see this dependency on the virtual assistant. We see basically a glasses form factor or something coming along. We'll eventually get to the idea of photorealism. But for me, it really comes down to, from everything that I've seen from evaluating emerging technology adoption and trends over the last 50 years, my prediction is that by 2028 is when we will see kind of multimodal begin to drive at scale. Obviously with the pandemic, that may slow us down a little bit. I've worked with a number of different technology organizations, talking to everybody from Nokia and their approach to 5G and their predictions of, ubiquitous 5G devices by 2024. You follow the patents from Apple and Samsung and some of the others tied to smart contact. And there's been rumors about Apple releasing a glasses-focused product. There's been a lot of focus on the hardware side from Apple. You look at the machine learning capabilities on device. You look at the ability to then execute web AR-based functionality or directly from the operating system. So all of these things are preparing us for kind of the next modality for us to actually view or interact with the world. So it's a lot of fun.
Yes. Do you think, given today's climate, it may inhibit that shift forward in terms of the investment that's required to make that shift?
It could. I mean, this 2020 is changed the game a little bit. You've gone through this massive disruption of business as usual, and now you're getting into this what's next phase. And what I've told a lot of businesses and organizations is it's really time to reevaluate the comprehensive strategy and approach that you may have. Really look at the needs of your consumer as they've shifted and changed. Things have shifted more in line with themes from the Great Depression than they have with, previous to where we've been. So when you start thinking about the things that are important to consumers, when you start thinking about the shifts in behavior, the role of physical retail versus digital, the role of just even being understanding of how consumers are, what their world looks like today. How you communicate is incredibly important. So I think it can. I think that organizations are definitely adapting, is what I've seen, to kind of the new challenges that are being presented. And I think from a technology evolution perspective, that's the beauty of a lot of kind of technology focused organizations. You can work from anywhere. So there may be a slowdown, but I think that we'll still see an acceleration once a new form factor that actually, the thing people don't understand, when Google Glass launched, we didn't have the creator society like we have today. There's such a dependency now, and that's why I talk a lot about Empower. It's that 69% of Gen Z has their own YouTube channel. 66% view the camera as a platform to create from. So there's this second nature to constant connectivity that when you start moving into a new type of form factor for a glass that looks more like what I'm wearing today versus this industrial thing with a piece on the side, you can then begin to see how we'll make those shifts.
Yeah. Okay, great. And to wrap up, what results can be achieved if others follow the advice that you've just mentioned?
So it's really important when you think about adopting emerging technology into your organization. I follow a 70-20-10 kind of approach. 70% of investment is in things that are tried and true that are going to drive the business and drive it forward. 20% are in technologies that they're new, but you can prove some type of return based on the core objective you're trying to apply. But I also recommend that 10%, and it flexes. For some organizations, it's 1% to 2%, but on average, it's about 10%, that you invest in technology that you're placing bets. And it's incredibly important to have a 3-year roadmap. And I'll link it back to the new 4 Ps that I talked about at the onset of our call. It's less about product, price, place, promotion moving forward. It's now about plan, have a plan for data and data strategy. It's about predictive. Understand that a lot of the data and information is going to be driving predictive decisioning. That's whenever we're going to really reach this inflection point for the role that AI is going to play in our lives. When it can successfully predict our behaviors, we know we're heading towards the 3rd P, which is proxy. understanding that virtual assistants are going to become proxies. My virtual assistant will eventually talk to your virtual assistant, can run the scheduling behind the scenes for us, and just take care of specific tasks. The final P is to also understand that you're designing experiences under the idea of pervasive experiences. That's voice, that's vision, that's touch, that's going beyond traditional desktop and mobile, and considering what the next experiences are going to be that are going to influence behavior and drive the business forward. So it's always delivering what's working today. It's then experimenting with things that you've seen use cases in other industries that can be applied to your business based on your objective. And ultimately, it's also about experimenting and placing a few bets, but they're educated bets based on the other 90% of the investment that's been done and what's ultimately coming.
Okay, great. Tom, thank you so much for sharing your insights. There's so much we can take away from that. Where can we go to hear more from you?
You can find a lot of my content on blackfin360.com. So there are over 500 posts, there are videos, content. If you want to find me as a speaker, the speaker bio is there as well as social platforms. So across Instagram, Twitter, I stream on Twitch, so I'm a big gamer. So twitch.tv/blackfin360.
And you also run a podcast, don't you?
I contribute to podcasts all the time. So yes. Yeah. So a lot of that repository is on BlackFin as well.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks again, Tom. It has been great catching up with you.
Leo, you too. Thank you so much for having me. You've been phenomenal during this entire process. So thank you again.
Cheers.